This ABC11 Eyewitness News special, your first alert to winter, is sponsored by the Kellum Law Firm. We're with you all the way.
Right now, your first alert to winter. Over the next 30 minutes, we're going to help you become an expert on North Carolina winters. My month-by-month forecast on what to expect this year and how a slight change in conditions can make a big difference in what falls at your house.
Also ahead, how to keep your energy bill low as the temperature outside drops. Plus, tips to help you get around safely when the roads get slick. And how local first responders are preparing for the winter months ahead.
Fire department has to respond 365 days a year, 24/7.
And the big question, will we have a white Christmas? I'll break down the chances, plus point you in the right direction if snow is on your holiday wish list.
And now, the ABC11 Eyewitness News First Alert Weather Team and your first alert to winter.
Thank you for joining us for the ABC11 Eyewitness News special, your first alert to winter. I'm Chief Meteorologist Don Schwenneker.
And I'm Meteorologist Quaylin Murphy.
You know, our entire First Alert weather team has been working for you, and over the next 30 minutes, we're going to show you insight on how we forecast a winter storm, how it develops, and the factors that turn a storm from rain to ice to snow.
So stick around as we first alert you to winter.
It's time for your winter forecast. And before we actually give you the forecast, I want to show you 4 big things we look at to help make this forecast. Because people will say, how do you look at a forecast and decide what we're going to see? The number one factor for us in North Carolina is La Nina versus El Nino. When we're talking about these terms, we're talking about the temperature of the water in the Pacific Ocean. Warmer than average waters mean an El Nino year. Cooler than average waters mean a La Nina year. And the different temperatures can cause different kinds of weather here in central North Carolina. This year, we're in a La Nina year. Next, we look at the North Atlantic Oscillation. We're talking about the ocean, the northern Atlantic, and the currents in it. Different currents can cause different systems to either pass across the U.S. or force them to the south. So we'll take a look at where we are there. Solar cycles. The sun at times puts out more energy or less energy, and that can be over several years. Where are we in the current solar cycle can determine the type of winter we see. And then finally, a Siberian snowpack. In Siberia and northern Russia, if they have a lot of snow, it can actually help push colder air over the North Pole and down into the U.S., and that can play a factor as well. So we've looked at these and a few other things, and we've come up with your winter forecast. Let's start with the triangle in December. Now, I'm using 30-year averages because over the last 30 years, it's actually been warmer than the 100-year average. And the average temperature over the last 30 years, 44.6 degrees and 0.8 of an inch of snow. So where will we be this year? I think we're going to be at or just a little below average. Some of that Siberian snowpack should force a little cold air into us in December. And as far as snow chances go, I like a trace, but I'd put up to an inch, especially in our northern counties. I don't think we'll see widespread snowfall in December, unfortunately. Our best chance for snow actually comes in January. Statistically speaking, 41.5 degrees is the average temperature and 2.5 inches of snow. That's the best chance at seeing snowfall in our region. I think this winter in January, 39 to 41 degrees, so just at or a little below average, and the snowfall right where it should be, 2, maybe a little more, up to 4 inches of snow in some of the northern counties. It could all come in one day, and then that would be it, but I think that's our best bet at seeing some snowfall, because when we get to February, we're typically warmer. Snowfall is typically a little lower. 1.3 inches of snow is what we average, and I think this year will be above average for the temperature, 45 to 47. Just not seeing a lot of snowfall in February. What about the Sandhills? The temperatures are usually warmer and the snowfall totals are usually lower, and that's exactly what happens in December. We average 46.8 degrees, 0 inches of snow, and I think this year will be at or just a smidge below average, and I don't see much in the way of snowfall in December. Coming up later, we'll talk about white Christmas possibilities. January, 30-year average, 43.8 degrees. You do average 1/10 of an inch of snow in the Sandhills. I think that's your best shot at seeing a trace of snow. I did put trace to an inch, though I don't think we'll see any widespread 1-inch totals, but we'll have to watch for that. And then finally, February, we see the 30-year average at 46.9 degrees and a trace of snow, and I don't think we'll see any snow this year because I think we'll be above average, could touch 50 for our average temperatures. Now, you should know, I mentioned earlier that it's a La Nina year. La Nina can sometimes bring storms that bring a lot of snow. They're very hard to predict, and it's hard to put them in a seasonal forecast. As a matter of fact, you might remember in January of 2000 on the 25th, we got 17.9 inches of snow falling in 24 hours at RDU. That was a La Nina year. So I'm saying there's a chance, not a big chance, but if you're a snow lover, one storm can make a big difference in a winter forecast.
So let's dive more into the La Nina pattern, which will be the backdrop for the 2022-23 season. La Nina winters tend to be a bit drier and warmer overall for the southeastern United States. That does include central North Carolina as the jet stream retreats to the north. Now, it's not unusual to experience 2 La Ninas in a row, but a triple dip event, that's rare, and that hasn't happened since 1950. Also keep in mind that when we look at La Nina years at RDU, only 39% of them have had above average snowfall.
But as we've seen over the last 2 years, each La Nina has its own personality. For instance, the 2020-21 winter ended up being the 12th wettest on record for the state.
We had pretty frequent storm systems coming up out of the Gulf of Mexico, so in some ways that winter acted more like an El Nino pattern.
And last year we had temps in the 70s on Christmas Day and New Year's Eve. It was the 10th warmest winter on record for the state. Oh, but then that pattern shifted.
We had some cooler weather, even some snow on several weekends during January, and then by February we were back in that warm pattern.
With models showing a weakening La Nina, last year probably gives a better indication as to what we'll experience this winter.
We could still see that variety. We could still see a few weeks of cooler weather, even some snow possibly mixed in.
If you're hoping for snow, January is the month to watch. In Raleigh, nearly half of the measurable snow in the past 8 La Nina winters has occurred in January. Recent rains, cooler air, and less evaporation have helped to reduce drought concerns so far, but we'll start watching for potential drought concerns in February, especially if we start warming up.
Some of the first impacts we would probably see in that case are increased fire activity. Beyond that, once we start getting into the planting season, farmers may be worried they may not have enough soil moisture to get some of their planting done on time.
The hope is that we'll see a few well-timed rain or snow events to help limit these issues.
Rain, snow, sleet, and ice. We see all types of precipitation here in North Carolina. As meteorologist Steve Stewart explains, a small change in the weather can lead to big impacts.
Winter in central North Carolina, we get every type of precipitation, from rain to snow to sleet, and of course freezing rain. Freezing rain is the worst. That's the one that causes the most headaches. And by the way, we get a chance at freezing rain every year. And when we get them, typically, especially in the last 20 years, they've been closer to a glaze to maybe quarter inch of ice. Now, when we get that much, trees, power lines are going to be coated. You see the little icicles hanging down on the power lines in those trees. The tree branches are going to bend, but we get few breaks. So some power outages are possible. We live in the land of oaks with billions of trees, so we can easily get a power outage, but it's not going to be widespread with this much ice. The roads could be slick, but it's mainly elevated surfaces. The earth is holding its temperature, so elevated surfaces means bridges and overpasses where it's not sitting on the earth, so there's air on either side of that steel structure and metal and concrete, and that can get colder, so that's where that gets slick. Now the contrast is when we go from a quarter inch to a half inch of ice. That is a significant impact. And for us, that threat happens every few years. Tree limbs are going to sag and break. They just can't hold the weight. When you get a half inch of ice, that's like adding 500 pounds of weight to these branches. They're going to break. Most roads are going to be covered in ice, not just bridges and overpasses, all the roads. And then you get widespread power outages. And all these factors I'm saying is not a major ice storm. A major ice storm would be 3/4 of an inch to an inch. And again, that has been a long time since we've had that. Now, what we really need for this to happen is, first of all, you have a system coming in with precipitation. That's number one. Number two, we have to have some air above freezing at about 1,000 to 5,000 feet. That has to be coming in to transition the snow over to a liquid. That is key. If you have that, the other thing you need is a constant supply of freezing air at the surface, typically around an Arctic high. If this is not in place, ice is self-limiting. Here's what I mean by that. When I have ice form, you go from a liquid to a solid. That actually releases latent heat, and that can keep the air temperature a little bit warmer. But if I have this constant supply of air that's below freezing coming in from the north and northeast, That will allow that ice to continue to accrue, and then we can have a major ice event. Now, the 4 types of precipitation that we get, it's pretty easy. When the entire column is below freezing, it's snow. When the entire column is above freezing, simple, it's going to be rain. The challenge then comes in between those two. We get sleet and freezing rain. In a lot of North Carolina, we live in this sleet snow zone where winter storms, but we do get the freezing rain too. So this is that warm air I talked about on the graphic that comes in at 1,000 to say 5,000 feet. If it's closer to 5,000 feet, the snow turns into rain and it melts, and then it gets back into freezing air. So it has a while to freeze before reaching the ground. That's the little sleet pellets that we get. However, if it's closer to 1,000 feet, or some cases even 500 feet above freezing air, you're going to have the raindrop travel a lot farther before it gets into that freezing air. It doesn't have time to freeze. It hits the ground, the surface, trees, branches, elevated things, and that's when it freezes. And that's the worst for us, to have freezing rain. And again, we're overdue for a major event. And one quick note too. When we're talking about the difference between snow and sleet, which is our common winter problems around here, if you look at the exact same moisture content, well, that would stack up to 8 inches of snow. If it transitioned to sleet, you're talking about 2 inches. There's a huge difference here. Snow stacks and sleet packs. That's what makes this such a challenging forecast a lot of times for us in central North Carolina. And every year we have to struggle with where that snow-sleet line is going to set up.
Rest assured, when you dial 911, if it's sleeting, snowing, raining, or whatever, we're coming.
Coming up, neither rain, nor snow, nor sleet, nor hail. That saying is often attributed to our dedicated postal carriers, but it could also apply to our brave first responders, how they prepare for winter knowing that there's no snow day for them.
Plus, potentially life-saving tips if you need to venture out on the roads during winter weather.
And I'll break down your chances of seeing a white Christmas this year. You know, with this year's winter pattern, a little bit of snowfall isn't out of the question.
But even if the snow does fall, for one group, there are no snow days.
The fire department has to respond 365 days a year, 24/7. So yeah, we just face the challenge head on.
While temps are generally dropping in the winter, emergency call volumes are at their highest, according to Lowell Smith Jr., Assistant Chief of Operations for the City of Raleigh Fire Department.
December, January, and February, we see our most residential house fires.
And we know the roads can turn treacherous, which usually leads to an increase in vehicle crashes. Smith says the fire department equipment is checked off every day and maintained in a constant state of readiness.
A lot of our equipment has automatic snow change. You know, obviously our travel time is going to be a lot slower.
Things have to slow down, and that's the message across the board from first responders.
We can operate in the snow, but when it's icy outside, we have difficulty.
The difficulty is not just with those on wheels, but also those on foot.
Watch where you're walking and watch where you're driving. And the slip and fall calls seem to increase during these times.
Rest assured, when you dial 911, if it's sleeting, snowing, raining, or whatever, we're coming.
For some emergency situations, getting bystander CPR on the scene before emergency responders arrive can dramatically increase the victim's chances of survival. There's an app for that in Wake County. It's called Pulse Point.
So Pulse Point will alert you that there's a cardiac arrest if you are in a public setting within a quarter of a mile.
Proof that there's true power in community.
Winter means falling temperatures and higher heating bills.
After the break, meteorologist Robert Johnson shows you how to save money during these colder months.
And I'll help you keep safe while you're driving in winter weather. Driving in winter weather is tough for most of us. I'll be the first to say I'm a chicken out on the roads when it starts to get icy or snowy. So we're going to talk about the best ways to stay safe during the winter weather. You know we're going to see some ice this winter, and you know we're probably going to see some snow. So the first thing is to make sure you have adequate tread on your tires and check your tire pressure. So Don Swiniger taught me the best trick. You take a quarter and you put it down into the tread of your tire, and you make sure that the head of George Washington is facing you. If you see any of George Washington's face, that means, or his head at all, that means you need new tires for the winter weather. Because if you don't have enough tread on your tires, you're not going to be able to stop fast enough, and certainly you're not going to have any grip at all on the roads when you need it most. So that's going to be the best thing to do, and you can start that early. You can do that before we even get any snow. Remove the ice and snow from your car before you leave your neighborhood. I say this all the time. The Sheriff's Department says it, Highway Patrol says it. However, we do it, and I don't do it, but lots of folks do this. They leave that snow on the top of their car or on the back, and then when they're driving down the road, it comes off, it hits the car behind them. That causes multiple crashes every single time we have a snowstorm. So please be considerate and clean off the ice and snow from your car. And skidding. This is something I would not do instinctually. I would not turn into the direction of my skid. So if you're skidding, if the back of your car is skidding to the right, you need to turn to the right to correct yourself. It's not something that you're going to do instinctually, so definitely try that and practice that before you have to do that. Because when roads are icy, that skidding really becomes an issue. Black ice, it's definitely something we deal with a lot here because we get that snow, it melts, and then refreezes night after night, and you can't see it. And it's normally always on overpasses and bridges. So you definitely don't want to accelerate very quickly. You don't want to use your brakes to stop. You really kind of want to just take your foot off the gas and allow the car to come to a stop on its own. Very hard to do when you're going fast, for sure. Remove ice and snow. We've already talked about the importance of doing that, but you also want to remove it from your windows, mirrors, and lights so that you can see. You can see out your front window, you can see out your back window, your side windows, your mirrors. If you can't see, then certainly that is a problem. I've actually done that before, and it definitely makes driving much harder, so do not do it. Tire pressure. You can always get your tire pressure checked. Most cars these days will tell you your tire pressure is low, and when we get cold weather, we always get that first indication from our car that the tire pressure is low because cold air contracts. So definitely check your tire pressure out before we get a snow event. And when we were talking about black ice and why it always forms first on bridges and overpasses, this is just a little bit of information for you. When we have bridges and overpasses, the air temperature itself may not be below freezing, but because the roadway is over top of an airspace, it's going to get colder faster than the surrounding air. So any type of moisture that's left over, even on the sides of the road, that freezes can cause so many crashes. It's unbelievable how many crashes I report on each year with black ice. I think it's one of the biggest reasons we have crashes because people aren't looking out for it, and if you travel early in the morning, you definitely can't see it because it just looks like wet pavement. So as we head into yet another winter season here in the Carolinas, take your time, folks, and stay safe.
Your first alert to winter and Eyewitness News, helping you through the cold months ahead.
Here's meteorologist Robert Johnson with simple solutions to keep your power bill from burning through your budget.
It's the most wonderful and the most expensive time of the year. As the mercury drops, our energy bills rise, and there's no doubt that can put an extra strain on our wallet. But there are some easy ways to save cash. Jeff Brooks, Principal Communications Manager for Duke Energy, says there are many things we can do in our home to keep us from busting our budget.
In the Triangle, we have lots of different ages of homes, and we have a lot of classic homes, and those homes often have lots and lots of very small drafts. If you look around your house, most homes have enough drafts to be equivalent of cutting a giant hole inside, the side of the house. You wouldn't do that in real life, but we don't notice those little drafts around doors and windows that can add up cumulatively in your home.
Since more of us are working from home, this makes energy efficiency even more important.
A simple Saturday project is going and checking around those doors and windows. You can use anything from an incense stick or anything that creates a little trail of smoke to see where those drafts are. And then you can just put some caulking around that or weather stripping inside the door, and that's going to make a huge difference.
He also recommends keeping your air filter clean by replacing it every 1 to 3 months. Also, don't turn your heat off if you aren't leaving the house for a long period of time. Instead, set your temperature to the lowest comfortable setting in your home. Turning the heater on and off frequently will only make the energy system work harder, which will cause your electricity bill to increase. Plus, check your lighting. The latest and greatest will last longer and save you money.
Have you upgraded to energy efficient LED lights? They use a fraction of the power of a standard light bulb. They use even less than the older CFL bulbs.
But the last tip is the easiest of all.
One of the things that I think is the easiest thing is taking advantage of what the sun gives us. The sun gives us natural heat every day. So if we can open our blinds on the sunny side of the house during the day, let that natural greenhouse effect happen in our home, and then make sure you close those blinds when the sun goes down, you can cut down on some of the artificial heat with some of the natural heat that nature gives us.
Eyewitness News and your first alert to winter. We have you covered when it comes to keeping your fur babies safe when they step outside.
We know road salt can corrode cars and infrastructure, but it can also be problematic for our pets. Dr. Paige Wages says it's very dehydrating to the feet of dogs and cats.
It dries their pads up pretty bad and will cause them to crack immediately.
More serious issues can develop if pets ingest rock salt. Then it only takes a small amount to lead to big problems.
Kidney failure would be the big one. Vomiting, diarrhea, a lot of times we'll see some GI upset from it.
One big indication may be dehydration.
Sometimes it's funny because people think, oh, my dog is drinking a lot of water suddenly, and it's because they're trying to dilute it.
If your pet has to track through freshly salted areas, be sure to give their paws a good cleanse. You may also consider making a homemade ice melt with a simple item you have around the house, plain old table salt.
And you can actually mix a little salt with Dawn dish detergent, and that actually will help dissolve it as well.
And finally, consider investing in little booties for your pet.
The package might say, "We'll walk like a duck." When you first put it on, that is true, but they do get used to it.
Are you dreaming of a white Christmas? It may be a daydream if you live in central North Carolina. Just ahead, your best chance to see snow for the holiday season. Let's talk a little bit about winter in North Carolina. What makes it different here than maybe some other places?
Well, we are situated near the ocean, so we stay a little bit warmer than some other places, but we still get a fair bit of cold air thanks to some cold air damming from the mountains. So we can get snow, we can get rain, or as we know here, we can get ice too in the winter.
Finally, white Christmas. We don't see many of them around here in North Carolina. Where's the best place to go if you want to hopefully see a little bit of snow at Christmas time?
Well, you want to get up in the mountains. If you like skiing, if you like white Christmas, if you like snow, you got to get up there. And there are some places that are making snow right now, so it may not be the real deal, but it's as close as we can get.
Well, you heard the doctor say it. Your best chance is in the mountains of North Carolina, and that's just a 10% chance. If we zoom it out, the white areas, a 90% chance or better. You got to go way north or out to the Rocky Mountains. That's your best chance at a white Christmas. How about big cities? If you want to go to a city with a chance at seeing some snow, Minneapolis has a 77% chance of at least 1 inch of snow on the ground on Christmas Day. Closer to us, Buffalo, New York, 50-50 shot, depending on where those snow bands set up off the lake. Salt Lake City, Utah, 48% chance, but if you don't have snow in Salt Lake, you can always go up into the Wasatch, very close, and lots of snow and ski areas up there. In Milwaukee, Wisconsin, a 43% chance of seeing a white Christmas. If you're staying in the Carolinas, go west, head to the mountains. That's your best shot at a white Christmas.
So, Don, what you're saying is probably no sledding on Christmas Day, but there'll be plenty of other ways to enjoy winter weather, right?
Absolutely, and we want you to be safe too. Remember, you can track winter weather 24/7 no matter where you live.
Get the forecast at your fingertips with the ABC11 North Carolina app. Sign up for First Alert Doppler Radar, plus winter watches and warnings delivered right to your phone wherever you are.
For Quaylen Murphy and the entire First Alert weather team, thank you so much for joining us for this First Alert to Winter. Stay safe.